Just have a look at these hieroglyphs. They're pretty, aren't they? But they're also gibberish, right? Well, by the end of this video, I promise you that they won't be. You're going to understand exactly what this means and why. And you can understand what a load of other hieroglyphs mean too. Let's get started with another odd words. This is the Egyptian Museum inside Berlin's Neues Museum. They've been kind enough to let me loose among all of these astounding ancient artifacts. Did you know that ancient Egypt was already ancient before it was over? Cleopatra lived closer to the invention of the ninja air fryer than to the building of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Amazing. Anyway, many of these sarcophagi, or sarcophaguses, take your pick, that you see surrounding me are adorned with these curious signs, writings from ancient times. Writings that we call hieroglyphics. Or do we?
I would say hieroglyphs.
That's Ilona Regulski, curator here and a world authority on ancient Egypt. So I just got it wrong. What's the difference between hieroglyphs and hieroglyphics?
It's not written in stone, no pun intended, but...
Not intended, are you sure?
Yeah, hieroglyphs is the noun, hieroglyphic is the adjective.
Right.
So you refer to hieroglyphic writing, but they are hieroglyphs.
Hieroglyph literally means sacred carving, and Ilona's going to help us get to grips with the basics of learning how to read them using the real-life Egyptian artifacts here at the museum, beginning with this monumental, quite literally, inscription from the tomb of a district governor called Metgen. This is his name, Metgen. I'm going to show you how to read that, but first, what's the overall message of what we're looking at here?
Yeah, so this is part of a biography. It's actually the oldest biography we have from ancient Egypt and maybe in the entire world. I don't know of any other biographical text that consists of long sentences that we have anywhere, really, from 2600 BC. So this is more than 4,000 years old.
Unbelievable. So this is perhaps the oldest detailed life story in the world. So how on earth do we understand it? Well, if you ever find yourself presented with some hieroglyphs for whatever reason, your first thought might be, where do I start? And that is a very appropriate question, because the first thing you need to work out before you can start reading is where the thing begins and in which direction you should read it. Well, ancient Egyptian texts are read from top to bottom, like we're used to, but they can be read either from left to right, like we read, or from right to left. Confusing. However, there is a very clever way to immediately know which direction you're dealing with.
If you look at the entire text, if you zoom out a little bit, we know that we start reading on the right-hand side. How do we know this? Because we have certain signs that have clear fronts and backs, like a bird or human being, or here this decapitated animal. They all look...
Yeah. It's meant to have no head.
Yes, it's meant to be like this. They look at the beginning of the text. So we know in this case that we have to start reading here. There are a few exceptions to that with religious texts, but in general, this is the rule.
So look for the people and animals, and they will always be looking at the beginning, staring into your face as you approach them. Now, you may already know that the Rosetta Stone, the ancient tablet containing the same message in Greek, Demotic and hieroglyphic script, was of course key to deciphering hieroglyphs. So I am delighted to say that this video is sponsored by Babbel, who can help you decipher any other language. Babbel was actually founded here in Berlin and has become one of the top language learning apps in the world. I've been using it to learn Swedish. I talk a lot on this channel about the impact of the Vikings on the English language, so I thought it'd be good to get to grips with one of the modern descendants of the language they spoke, Old Norse. But also, Sweden's really nice, and I want to be able to be polite in Swedish when I'm there. What I really like about Babbel is that it prepares you to have practical conversations with the aim of getting you actually starting speaking to people in your target language, because from my experience, that is when the learning really starts. One of the fascinating things I learned from Babbel is something that Swedish has in common with ancient Egyptian. It has no word for the. Instead, you add something to the end of the noun. For example, the Swedish for house is hus, but the Swedish for the house is huset. And I've been learning other important stuff too.
Kan jag få en öl, tack? kan jag få en öl, tack?
So choose your target language and get started today. Use my special link in the description of this video or this QR code to get up to 55% off your subscription, which is absolutely loads. Plus, there's a 20-day money-back guarantee, so there really is no risk. Let me know in the comments which language you want to learn. So we already discussed the direction in which you read an overall text, but you'll notice that in hieroglyphs, words like our pal Metjen's name, which can be written like this or like this, which it is in this case, are written in their own little blocks, with some signs next to one another and others one on top of the other. So again, we need to know in which order to read them. And once again, there are simple rules. Just read into the front of the faces again, and read the top signs before the bottom ones. So our dead fella's name should be read in this order, or if the text were linear, like this. Now, as with any good linguistic rule, there are exceptions. If a sign makes mention of a god, for example, it'll often get boosted to the start of the word. Quite right, too. For example, the titles of a lot of kings end with a declaration, Son of Re, all kings being direct descendants of the sun god Re, or Ra, represented by the sign of the sun disk. Despite this Re being at the end of their names, the sun disk usually goes at the start, out of respect. Before we can draw out Metjen's name from these hieroglyphs, we need to understand what each of them means. Now, sometimes one of these little pictures does represent the thing it's a drawing of, don't overthink it. Sometimes an arm just means arm, or a face just means face. Usually these are accompanied by a line to show you that you should take them literally, but that's what they mean. Or a pair of legs can just mean legs. But far more often than not, you can't take the signs on face value, not even the face. They can signify a few different things.
Some signs are letters. Some signs represent one letter. For example, this wavy line here is the letter N.
Ah, that's the same sign as we've got here. So that means N, does it?
People could say this is an alphabetic letter because it's one sign for one letter, but I prefer not to use this term because it's confusing, because we also have two letter signs and we have three letter signs.
Right, so these are the hieroglyphs that we, as folk who are used to using an alphabet, can most easily get our heads around. Signs representing specific sounds. Put these sounds in the right order and you get a word. And it really does work like that. This picture of a mouth on its own represents an R sound, like a R. A leg on its own is a B sound. And this cute little sign called the loaf represents a T sound. Line them up and you get a hieroglyphic rendering of my name, Robert. You should try doing that with your own name. Pop it in the comments as well. Here are some more of the single letter hieroglyphs. This horned viper represents a F sound, an F. This little rectangle, sometimes called the stool or mat, represents a P, a P sound. This adorable little quail chick is usually transliterated as a W, although it can make an oo sound. The reed is a gentle Y sound, transliterated with an I. The tethering rope makes a T or Ch sound, and this owly guy is a M. Now, I mentioned specifically those last two because looky here, they feature in our dead fella's name. And remember what order we said we had to read them? So, say it with me, Metjen. It's our guy's name. Metjen. But what of this leftover character? Well, do you remember how Ilona just mentioned that there are also hieroglyphs that represent two letters?
We also have two letter signs.
Two letter signs.
Well, that's what this is. It's known as the throw stick, and it represents a T and an N together, pronounced chen. That's right. It makes the same sound as these two signs together, the end of the name Metjen. So we have a doubling up here, don't we? And that's because these two signs are technically what are called complements. What they're doing here is telling you what that stick means, because that stick has lots of different meanings in different contexts. It can mean throw, or it can even mean foreigner, depending on where it is. But no, in this case, it's there because of the sound it makes, and these two other signs are confirming that. You might be thinking, hold on, that stick is the wrong side of the bird, and technically Yes, it is, and I'm very impressed that you noticed. Ilona told me it was probably just an artistic choice by whoever inscribed this. Although I have noticed that some scribes like to put sticks next to the front of birds to make it look a bit like they're sitting on them. I don't know if that could be it. Maybe. But I digress. I now need to speak about something you'll no doubt have noticed, and that's that rubbit and mchen seem incomplete. We've missed off a load of the letters from the word, haven't we? Why? Well, that's because hieroglyphic writing is a vowel-free zone. Hieroglyphs generally only cover the consonants. Again, there are exceptions like the E sound at the end of a name like Senbi, or the U sound in Khufu, the builder of the Great Pyramid at Giza, but otherwise, they honestly aren't there, like they aren't there in Metgen. So how do we know what these words sounded like then? Well, we don't. Not based on the hieroglyphs anyway. It's possible to get clues from later versions of the language like Coptic, or for the names of kings we can look at what people speaking other languages called them, but otherwise Egyptologists don't know for certain what the vowel sounds between the consonants actually were. Therefore, to enable them to make sense of the words before them, Egyptologists instead insert their own, I suppose, placeholder vowels. This usually involves just putting an E or an E sound in between the consonants. This is not meant to sound like ancient Egyptian. It's just supposed to help with the reading. But it means that a lot of our modern attempts at ancient Egyptian words have E sounds in them, where originally they potentially didn't. Take Metgen. His name might have been Metgen, but it might have been Matjin or Mutjan or Metjun. Nobody really knows. If somehow I managed to travel back in time to ancient Egypt, install myself as king, perhaps by showing off my fancy Casio watch, and, I died a regal death, the scribes might have written this above my tomb, and modern-day Egyptologists would be calling me Rebet the First. By the way, how do you like my cartouche? The cartouche is the ring around my name. Having one is an honour reserved only for royal names. It was the realisation that the signs written within these easy-to-spot rings were the names of pharaohs that was key to deciphering hieroglyphs. For example, on the Rosetta Stone, researchers were able to cross-reference the signs in the cartouches with the names written in the Greek and Demotic versions. Pretty smart. Ilona actually spent a good period of her career with the Rosetta Stone at the British Museum, so let's get her help with understanding some more of the types of hieroglyphs, other than the literal ones and the ones that represent sounds, as we've discussed. What others are there?
We have signs that can represent an entire word, or we have signs that we call classifiers, which means that it enhances the meaning of the group of hieroglyphs that precedes it.
Now, classifiers are really interesting. They're sometimes called determinatives too, but don't let the academic names put you off. They're one of my favourite aspects of hieroglyphic writing. What they do is give you a little hint as to what the word they're attached to means. This is way more useful than it sounds. If two words are otherwise identical, the classifier is going to help you tell them apart. So imagine if we had two ways of writing present. One where we put a little picture of a gift after it, and another where we put a clock. You'd never be in any doubt as to which of the two meanings of present was meant by the word. Or a better example, say if we wrote one version of bow with a picture of a weapon, another with a picture of some clothing, and another with a picture of a person. You'd be able to tell apart a bow and arrow, a bow on a baby's booties, and a bow an action. And if we had another with a picture of a ship, you'd know we meant the bow of a boat. This is how classifiers work. Here's how they play out with hieroglyphs.
The word for a scribe, somebody who writes, or the verb to write, or the noun, a book, uses the same core of letters, so it's the same stem of the word. The classifier will tell you what it is, which one of it. So the scribe will have a seated man. The verb will have the same stem. The book will have the classifier of the papyrus roll. So if you start learning, if you start reading, you see sesh, okay, it can be this, 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 and then the classifier will tell you which one of those you have to choose. And
it's particularly elegant that the classifier does give you a genuine hint, even if you don't understand hieroglyphs. The idea that movement is expressed by two walking legs is a very easy one to relate to, isn't it?
Yeah.
Here are some more classifiers. This guy attached to a word tells you it relates to a god or a king. It often appears in gods' names. And this tiny sparrow fella tells you that you're dealing with something small, or in fact, by extension, something bad, which seems harsh on sparrows. I like them. So those are classifiers. They're kind of cool. Not that cool, that cool. Now, where next? Well, there are a few things left to discuss. In fact, things is an example of one of them. Let's talk about plurals. Now, we turn one into many by sticking an S or an ES at the end of it, usually. But that is not how the ancient Egyptians did it.
You see the round hieroglyph there?
Yeah.
3 times the same hieroglyph usually means a plural.
Ah.
And the hieroglyphs itself depicts a city.
That's a city.
Yes, so, well, in kind of very simplified form that
Abstract.
it's very abstract. It's actually the main crossroads of a city, and cities were probably round.
So tripling the sign is one way of making a plural. Another is actually more similar to our method of adding an S. You can create a plural by adding this guy, the quail chick. So this means bird, the singular bird, despite the word itself having 2 birds in it. To make that the plural birds, we can add the tiny quail. It's then also convention to add 3 little dashes to reinforce the plurality, and altogether, that's birds. Sometimes the scribe won't bother with the quail and just do the 3 dashes, which makes an awful lot of sense to me. Ilona showed me an example.
Here the plural is written with 3 vertical strokes rather than repeating the sign. It's quite a complicated sign, the scribal palette. So they were efficient by just indicating the plural with 3 strokes. So he was the head of the scribes of the temple, Hut, Netzer and Imen.
What Ilona is showing us there are cursive hieroglyphs, handwritten ones. They're beautiful.
This is an amazing papyrus. It's actually a religious text that helps the deceased live in the afterlife. And to have a long papyrus like this, the person must have been of very high status, must have been able to afford a text like this. But this is a very common scene where the heart of the deceased is weighed against the feather of Ma'at. Yeah. A feather, of course, is very light, so your heart has to be very light, so it's a judgment scene. And if it's more heavy than the feather, then this monster will eat you.
Eek. I could watch Ilona reading hieroglyphs all day, but instead let's talk about a few extra features of them. One of them is that they have no punctuation. There are no little marks to tell you when one thought ends and another begins, nothing to encourage a pause for breath or to flag up speech. There is no punctuation, period. Full stop. No punctuation is one less thing to worry about, isn't it? However, one thing that you do have to worry about that English doesn't have is grammatical gender. You see, nouns can be masculine or feminine, like they can in French or Spanish. And you can spot the feminine ones because they have this cute little sign with them. It's a loaf of bread. So I think that's all you need to get started on hieroglyphs. Shall we put what we've learned to the test by bringing back this from the very start? Are we ready to read it? I reckon we might be. So the bird and the jackally fella, they're pointing to the left. So that means we start on the left. Our first sign is the reed, right? Which, as I told you earlier, represents a kind of y sound, but it's written down with an I. It is a consonant I, like you sometimes find in Latin. Don't overthink it. Which sign next? Well, it's the water, isn't it? Because we work top to bottom. And just as it did in Metjen's name, here it represents a N, an N. Next, we've got the box. Remember I told you it was a stool or a mat, and that makes a P sound. Then we have the quail chick. Now, we discussed how this could be a classifier, meaning small or bad, but if it were a classifier, it'd be at the end, and it isn't. So it's here to represent its sound, which we earlier discussed was oo, like in Khufu. So far we have inpu. Interesting. So what's this final sign? Well, literally, it is a jackal perched atop a shrine, but it is also the hieroglyph used to represent Anubis. That's right, the jackal-headed guide to the underworld. Did you know that Anubis, or Anubis, however you pronounce it, was not actually his name? Well, not his Egyptian one. anyway. We took the word Anubis from the Greeks. We did the same with others like Osiris. When you think about it, they sound Greek, don't they? So what was Anubis's ancient Egyptian name? Well, it was Inpu. Or at least that's our best guess at it based upon these signs, because taken in their entirety, what we have here are the hieroglyphs used by the ancient Egyptians to represent Anubis. And look, we did it. And I hope through all of this you've seen that Egyptian hieroglyphs aren't quite as mysterious as they first appear. You know, it hasn't really been that long that we modern folk have been able to understand them. The Rosetta Stone was deciphered in 1822, which, given how long ago ancient Egypt was, is pretty darn recent.
Since that, of course, 200 years have passed, and we are still working every day to try to understand the parts that we don't understand so well, and we still cannot read everything fluently, perfectly.
So don't feel bad for not understanding every hieroglyph you see. As yet, nobody can. Thank you so much for watching. Enormous thanks to Ilona Regulski for all of her help, and to the Neues Museum for letting me poke around in here. Thanks to Babbel for sponsoring this video, and if you liked this one, I recommend signing up to my totally free newsletter at robwords.com/newsletter, and then watch this video next. And I'll see you over there. Take care.